a possible new signing for Real Madrid could become the target of a war between European giants. But hold on, because that's not even the most shocking part of today's video. You know that player who always seemed 100% committed to Madrid? The one we thought was untouchable? He almost ended up at one of the richest rivals on the continent, and nobody knew about it. And to make things worse, Xabi Alonso is already starting to feel the weight of being the coach of the biggest club in the world. He's about to face one of the trickiest games of the season and might have to leave two absolute starters on the bench. But relax, I'm going to tell you everything. But only after you do what every true Madridista has to do. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell, because here it's only hot Real Madrid news. No stalling, no filter, and with lots of emotion. If you breathe this crest like I do, you're in the right place. Let's go together. Here's the deal. Real Madrid is about to face one of the trickiest moments of the calendar, the first game after the FIFA break. And, as it's almost become a curse in recent seasons, the return comes full of uncertainties, physical wear, and tough decisions for the coach. Right away, a tough challenge away from home, the clash against Real Sociedad at Anoeta, one of the most complicated stadiums to play at in Spain. And this time, Xabi Alonso will have to deal with a very delicate puzzle when putting together his starting 11. According to reports published by Mundo Deportivo, Alonso is facing a real dilemma in midfield, one of the team's most sensitive areas. The reasons? Simple and, at the same time, crucial. Federico Valverde and Franco Mastantuono, two players who have been absolutely essential at the start of this season, will only return to the club 48 hours before the game. Valverde, a true engine in the middle of the field, has started in every match so far. His ability to cover ground, connect defense and attack, and arrive with presence in the opponent's box is irreplaceable. Then there's Mastantuono, the young Argentine jewel who has already secured a starting spot, impressing with his maturity, vision, and technical skill. His ability to read the game between the lines has been decisive in the team's offensive buildup. The absence of either one would already be a challenge. Now, the possibility of losing both in the same match makes things even harder for the coach. Of course, technically, they'll be available. But at what cost? Coming back exhausted after international duty with little time to train and readjust to the club's system could be too risky, both physically and tactically. And Alonso knows that. The decision whether to use them or not could weigh heavily on the outcome of the game, and even on the start of the season. It's one of those choices that define coaches. If the coach decides to leave them on the bench or use them with restrictions, the alternatives are already mapped out. Dani Ceballos, who during the summer was linked with several transfer windows but ended up staying, is now fully committed to the Madrid project. He appears as an immediate option, especially because of his good ball control and positional intelligence. Another contender is young Arda Güler, who is still looking for minutes to finally break out regularly. The Turk has creativity, short dribbling, and the ability to play vertically. He could be an interesting weapon, especially in an away game where space is scarce. Aurelien Tchouameni, of course, is fundamental. With his physical presence and defensive awareness, he has everything to be the balancing point in this new midfield triangle. But let's be honest, none of these names can exactly reproduce the impact that Valverde and Mastantuono bring when they're fully fit. If both are rested or play below their ideal level, Real Madrid will need to adapt quickly on the field. And that, against Real Sociedad at home, is extremely dangerous. And it doesn't stop there. The scenario gets even more complicated if we consider that Alonso still hasn't settled on a permanent right back. Trent Alexander-Arnold and Dani Carvajal have been alternating in the opening rounds, in a rotation that aims to preserve fitness and find the ideal balance between defense and offensive buildup. The problem is that, with only 2 training sessions available before the match, there's no time to test new solutions. Alonso will have to rely on what he already knows about the players and the opponent. If there's one positive point amidst all this uncertainty, it's in attack. Vinicius Jr. and Rodrigo weren't called up by the Brazilian national team during this FIFA break, which means both came back rested, with controlled physical load and maintained training rhythm. Both should start, occupying the flanks and providing width, speed, and depth. And best of all, Kylian Mbappe, the new leader of Madrid's attack, is also in good physical condition and will once again be the central figure in the offensive system. The chemistry among the three is still in progress, but the early signs are more than promising. In other words, while midfield is a concern, the front line is practically set and fully charged to make the difference. The question is, will Real Madrid have enough possession and control to consistently feed this attack? Or will we struggle with an improvised and disconnected midfield, leaving space for Real Sociedad to dominate possession at home? And let's not forget, matches right after a FIFA break are historically tricky for Real Madrid. The pace drops, chemistry suffers, and the opponent, who often has fewer internationals, comes in with more preparation time. We've seen this before, and Xabi Alonso knows very well what's at stake. If he makes the right calls, we could leave San Sebastian with a solid win and more confidence for the rest of the season. Now, if he gets it wrong, the slip could cost dearly, not only in the standings, but also in building squad confidence at the start of this project. So, what would you do if you were Xabi Alonso? Rest Valverde and Mastantuono, or throw them in even if they're tired? Drop a comment because I want to see your ideal lineup for the game against Real Sociedad. Now check this out. According to Diario AS, Real Madrid has its eyes on a true machine in midfield who's been shining in the Bundesliga, a name that keeps growing and is already on the radar of some massive Premier League clubs. I'm talking about Angelo Stiller from Stuttgart. The guy is valued at 45 million euros. But the truth is, if any club wants to sign him now, they'll have to put more than 50 million on the table. That's right. 50 million for a 23-year-old defensive midfielder who's been dominating in Germany. And guess who's pushing for this signing? Yes, Xabi Alonso. He sees Stiller as the right guy to bring balance, vision, and intensity to the midfield. The coach is pressuring the board to act before it's too late, because look at the size of the problem. Stuttgart wants to hold on to the player at all costs. They see him as a key piece of their project. And there are still other sharks circling. Premier League clubs with deep pockets are watching closely, and even Bayern Munich, Stiller's former team, is monitoring the situation. In other words, if Real Madrid doesn't move fast, they could miss out on the guy. And you know how it works. The more he shines, the higher the price goes. The time to act is now. And before anyone asks, no, he's not coming to take anyone's spot. He would come to add, to strengthen, and maybe even be the natural successor of Kroos or Modric in the future. The project is long-term, but the interest is real. Do you think it's worth paying 50 million for Stiller? Or do you think there's a better name on the market to reinforce Madrid's midfield? Drop it in the comments because I'm going to read them all. And if you had to choose, Stiller or someone from the academy? Let's debate. And to wrap it up in style, here's a piece of information straight from Fabrizio Romano, the biggest insider in European football transfers. Rodrigo's name was seriously involved in the internal corridors of Paris Saint-Germain during the last transfer window. That's right. One of Real Madrid's main forwards was on the radar of one of the richest and most aggressive clubs on the continent. According to Romano, PSG saw Rodrigo as a strategic alternative in case Bradley Barcola eventually left, as he was being closely monitored by Liverpool. It was a chain movement that could have had huge consequences for Real Madrid. If Barcola had really left Paris, the French club was ready to trigger Plan B, and Rodrigo's name was among the favorites for the PSG board. What's striking is that even without an official bid being sent, internal talks did happen. Rodrigo was discussed in PSG's planning meetings as a viable piece to reinforce the squad, a technical profile they like and who has market value. A young, fast, versatile forward already with experience in big games, including Champions League titles. This shows just how closely the European market keeps an eye on everything happening inside Real Madrid's squad. Our number 11 does not go unnoticed. But the most important part came from the player himself. According to sources close to the club and the athlete, Rodrigo never considered leaving Real Madrid at this moment. He was firm and direct with the board. His plan is to stay at Santiago Bernabeu, consolidate his role, and fight for his place wearing the shirt of the biggest club in the world. For many, this attitude speaks louder than any tempting offer. And there's a new factor changing how the Brazilian sees his future at the club: the arrival of Xabi Alonso. Under Ancelotti, Rodrigo was often shifted out of position or even left out of decisive moments. Now, with Alonso, the situation has started to change. The new coach recognizes his talent and is willing to give him real opportunities to fight for a spot in the starting 11, even opening up space for him to play in the position where he feels most comfortable, something that was previously unthinkable due to the consolidated presence of Vinicius Jr. This new phase, along with the confidence of the coaching staff, reignited Rodrigo's competitive flame. He knows this is a decisive moment. Either he establishes himself as a key piece in the club's new cycle, or he risks falling into the shadow of other talents. And he chose to fight. No public demands, no complaints in the media, just work and commitment to the crest he represents. So if you love this crest, if you get excited with every piece of news, and want to know everything that goes on behind the scenes of the biggest club in the world, drop a like, comment down below, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel, because tomorrow there's more breaking news, more hot updates, and more Real Madrid. Here it's white blood, merengue soul, and a heart that beats to the rhythm of the Bernabeu. Hala Madrid, and nothing else.